I don't see a lot of players use the Flux Rifle, but a friend got me to try it, saying that it's absolutely outstanding, so I did. To be honest, I wasn't disappointed. Hey guys, hello and welcome back. As always, my name is Leyzar, and today we're going to be diving deeper into this Mastery Rank 6 primary weapon. I'm going to be covering a cheap build, something affordable that anybody can build, but of course we also have an endgame setup with a Riven. That being said though, please keep in mind that my builds and guides follow a new player friendly approach, simply because there's a lot of info here and I want anybody watching to understand how the weapon functions and how it should be built. So if you're a veteran of the game and already know most of this stuff, then please bear with me. And with that out of the way, let's jump into the Flux Rifle. Let's begin by having a look at how the weapon behaves without any mods equipped, and for that I'm simply going to be taking a couple of free shots. The Flux Rifle is a beam weapon with a limited range of 30 meters. Now if this is not enough for you, in most cases 30 meters from my point of view is enough, but this is a pinpoint accurate weapon, so if you were to slap on something like Sinister Reach, your range would be going up to 42, so that might be something worthwhile, especially again considering that the weapon is pinpoint accurate. You probably already noticed that I don't have any ammo reserves. That is because the Flux Rifle never runs out of ammo. After you stop firing, there is a short gap after which the ammo regenerates itself at a rate of 40 ammo a second. The gap there that you see that nothing happens, basically that is the reload time of the weapon, which by default is a single second. And that's pretty much it. Let's jump into stats to see precisely what we're dealing with. Mod capacity 60 out of 60, and if your Flux Rifle has only 30 out of 30, then jump into actions and install an Auto King Catalyst. The catalyst can be found from alerts, invasions, or if you're lucky, from the daily sortie. As an alternative measure, you can simply pay 20 plat to have one installed. Next, my weapon has been formatted a total of 9 times, but this was done only for the purpose of testing and different mod combinations. For the weapon build, I'm recommending you guys 5 forma will be required. Accuracy is 100, as you saw they're pinpoint accurate for the most part. So let's talk about heavy caliber. Yes, let's start on that note. If I was to slap on heavy caliber on most beam weapons, the effect is mostly negligible. And while the wiki says that the accuracy drop from heavy caliber isn't really noticeable, in fact it actually is. As you can see, the accuracy gets dropped to 14.4, and yes, you can run the math. 100 minus 55% is not 14.4, but leave the alone for now. It functions as it should from what I understand. And this is the resulting accuracy. As you can see, the beam is no longer steady as a rock, it's kinda all over the place. In testing, to be honest, I found this acceptable for the Flux Rifle. As you can see, it kinda peppers the targets within the crosshairs. For me, this is comfortable enough. It's really gonna come down to you if you're okay with heavy caliber or not, however. Next, we got a critical chance of 10%, and this is probably the weapon's biggest weakness. A very low crit chance, but the multiplier is decent at 2.0x, a fire rate of 12 with a magazine of 50, a punch through by default half a meter, which in actual gameplay testing didn't seem to make much of a difference. If you really want the beam to go through additional targets, you need to slap on some additional punch through, a reload of 1 second. Again, the reload is that pause when you stop firing and the weapon doesn't, the ammo doesn't go straight back up. You need to wait for that reload time. Riven disposition of 5 out of 5, which means that the Rivens will be extremely powerful and a status chance of 24%. If we take a look at the default damage, we got puncture and slash is about 75-78% of the total damage, so we are gonna be able to get some slashes through the weapon's status chance. Let's start slapping on some mods, starting with mandatory mod, Serration 165% extra damage. I am not calling heavy caliber mandatory, definitely not, because I know there will be some players that are simply not comfortable with the resulting accuracy. I'm cool with it, so that's what we're gonna be using. Next, we're gonna be going to a very specific mod for the Flux Rifle. This one is not hard to obtain or something like that. As you can see, I have 44 of them. They drop from doing index, plenty of them. Flux Overdrive, and it's only a couple of endo to max out. Status chance fluctuates between plus 150% and 250% over 5 seconds while the beam is fired. So you get it right, 150% is absolutely guaranteed. That's why my status chance jumped up from 24 to 60%. If you fire for a single second, you get another 20%, so up to 172 seconds, 190%, and so on and so forth. So the more you fire, the more the status chance will go up to a maximum of 250%, which will mean that that the status chance will be going up to 84%. This is all you need for the Flux Rifle. I highly recommend this mod. It is extremely powerful, even if you take into account just the base 150%, which once again is guaranteed alone. Pick this one up. No need to buy it from the trade chat. If you would, I guess it's 2 free plat, something like that. Again, plenty of these drop from index. Next, we're gonna go to multi-shot, the best thing on every single thing, mostly split chamber together with vigilante armaments. 90% multi-shot and 60% multi-shot, totaling 150% multi-shot. Now normally, if you were to apply multi-shot on a bullet-based weapon, let's say something like the T-Baron for example, your status chance would also be going up because you are firing multiple bullets, this representing a shot status chance. Not so in the case of beam weapons. In the case of beam weapons, what multi-shot does is amplify your damage, but the multiplier kind of works off the modded weapon damage value, so it applies after serration and heavy caliber. It works kind of like that. It is a tad kooky, but you're not getting multiple beams. Rest assured, no, you're not getting multiple beams. In any case, let's start slapping on some elemental damage. We can't really go into crit chance and crit damage. If I was to do so, here you go, point strike. If I was to slap on point strike, my crit chance only goes to 25%. That's 15% extra. It's simply not worth it, at least from my point of view. We're gonna go to elementals, like I said before, and elementals should be applied depending on circumstances. Where are you going, who are you fighting, and so on and so forth. For example, the infested have 4 health types, each with their own unique vulnerabilities and resistances. Fortunately for us, most infested are kinda weak, so I would recommend AoE weapons heavily modded into heat. If you're going up against Corpus faction with their own weapon, then you can build gas or toxin, which will bypass their shields entirely and deal damage to their health. If you really want to nuke down shields, then you can build magnetic, but I don't really advise it. If you're talking about the Grineer faction, these are still some of the toughest targets in Warframe, and they have 2 armor types, Alloy, which is weak to radiation damage, and Ferrite, which is weak to corrosive damage. Against Grineer, more often than not, your safest bet is to build corrosive, and currently in Warframe, corrosive is one of the most sought after elemental types, which is the elemental combo between electricity and toxin. In the case of the Flux Rifle, if you're going like I suggest with Flux Overdrive, then no point to go to the 60/60 mods. You can keep it cheap with Infected Clip and Stormbringer. Common mods, they don't cost a lot of endo to rank up. 90% toxin and 90% electricity, totaling 423 corrosive. Now let's pause for a quick second. Keep in mind that when it comes to status procs, the impact, puncture, and slash, the physical types, have a 4 times greater chance of proccing over elemental types such as corrosive. So even though I have a lot of corrosive on the weapon, 423, it's still way behind slash times 4. So that's a bit of a bummer. You can go further into corrosive if you so desire with a 60/60 mod. For example, you can go for, let's see, I think it's called Malignant Force. There we go, the 60/60. And you can get a higher status chance, which from my point of view, considering how Flux Overdrive work, isn't really worth it, but you can get 564 corrosive. As for your last slot, this is what I like to call the option slot. Plug into this one whatever you feel comfortable with. I found that on the Flux Rifle, adding some fire rate, especially considering that you never need to worry about ammo or bringing a carrier or something like that, fire rate is the way to go. So shred and prime shred. If I had prime shred, thank you D so much for not reworking the logging system. Anyway, shred 30% fire rate and 1.2 meters worth of punch through. This is a solid option, and this is what I recommend to you guys. But perhaps you want to delete your targets even quicker than that. You can go for more fire rate. So let's explore a couple of options. Speed trigger, you can never really go wrong with this one, 60% fire rate. And of course, you also have vial acceleration, which usually is my favorite, 90% fire rate at a cost of 15% damage. Now that 15% cost that you see there, that is not a multiplicative after effect, it simply takes 15% away from serration. Just think of it like that. Again, the negative isn't really that big of a deal, so you can 100% go for vial acceleration. Here's a mod that I thought will work fantastically on this weapon, and it's called Spring-Loaded Chamber, 75% fire rate. Now this one is in between vial acceleration and speed trigger, 75% with no negative. It's on reload, and you're gonna be doing plenty of reloads with the Flux Rifle. The reload is quick, so why not Spring-Loaded Chamber? Because it doesn't bloody work for some reason. Let me show you. There we go. We fire, we fire, we fire. Now we reload. A buff should appear on the upper right hand side of the screen, but it doesn't. Unfortunately, even though you are able to equip the mod, it doesn't function. And just to show you an example of how that mod should work, we're going to be using the Prisma Gorgon. Here you go, spring-loaded chamber. Fire a couple of shots, reload. Once again, look at my buff bar, and of course, spring-loaded chamber appears. And if I was to zoom in now, increased fire rate. I don't get why this mod is not working, probably because of how the Flux Rifle functions in general. So you can't use that one. That was kind of the point. And once again, my recommendation to you guys is to use Shred or File Acceleration, depending on your own preference. I believe that Shred or Prime Shred, better yet, will prove the biggest value, but I simply cannot help myself but use File Acceleration. Though keep in mind that this is not necessarily the best idea, not because Shred has punch through, but because of Flux Overdrive. I want to keep that beam active for as long as I can, simply so I can get the status chance up and up. Then again, File Acceleration does bring my kill time down, so it is DPS. Again, pick and choose depending on your own preference. What I'm going to be doing is spawning level 120 Corrupted Heavy Gunner. These are above sortie free, so let's see what the Flux Rifle is capable of doing. It takes about 5 seconds to kill one of these high level targets, just enough time for my Flux Overdrive to fully kick in. As soon as I get a couple of corrosive procs on a target, you will see that it absolutely murders it. For MR6, this is pretty good. Yes, there are better weapons in the game. If you were to go up to MR11, for example, we can talk about the Synapse. Now that is some serious single target damage, but as it stands now, I believe the Flux Rifle is a pretty good weapon. Now you probably noticed that I'm getting a lot of slashes on the target because slash is still #1 on my proc picking priority. Take a look at all those slashes. So why don't we build a weapon to take advantage of the high slash? So in order to do that, it's actually a pretty simple change here and there, because there's nothing else you should be doing except making the elemental combo from corrosive into viral, and we're simply going to be dropping electricity and adding cryo rounds, but now I can make use of this polarity. There we go. Now I got viral on the weapon. It's not even close to slash when it comes to proc priority, but that's a good thing. I don't need 1,000 status apps like I need for corrosive. I only need a couple of good ones because I'm not going to be reducing the health of my target lower than 50%. That's what viral does on a status proc. And you build viral damage not for the type of damage necessarily, but you build it for what it does on its status proc. So keep that one in mind. Now here's a tip about using prime cryo rounds. If you have this one, of course you want to use it. Just keep in mind that you don't want your viral amount to be rivaling your slash amount for procs. Look at slash times 4 again. So what you can do is add Fang Fusillade instead of File Acceleration or Vigilante Armaments to make sure you're getting a lot more slash procs than you are viral procs. And I'm going to be showcasing the weapon like this with prime cryo rounds just so you can see exactly how potent a slash build can be on this weapon. This is the first build I actually fought to test on the weapon, and I was expecting a lot better results. What you want to do with a slash build is hit a target till about 50%, then let the slashes deal the damage. I unloaded the full clip, and as you can see, the target will not bleed out. There's plenty of slashes on my target. The problem is the values are simply not there. You can go for a build such as this, but from my point of view, it is simply not worth it, even with prime cryo rounds. Or what else could you do to get more slash on the target? Increase the status chance. If you were to increase the status chance with something like Malignant Force instead of Infected Clip, then that would get you more status apps on the target. Unfortunately, you're also dropping a bit of damage while doing so. To be honest, I tested all variations and it's simply not worth it. There we go. Now we're gonna test a Riven setup. Of course I have a Riven for this one. It's a loaner from a friend because he loves the Flux Rifle and he plays a lot with it, and this one has been rolled 43 times. Damage and multi-shot. When it comes to stats priority for the Flux Rifle, we can't really go into let's get a Riven with critical chance, critical damage. It's not entirely worthless, definitely not, but considering the base amount of crit chance, you want to go for multi-shot and damage above everything else. From my point of view, the ideal Flux Rifle Riven would be damage multi-shot with a negative, something like that, or perhaps damage multi-shot electricity with a negative. Again, no crit chance, no crit damage, and the build is pretty much the same as the first one, except that I swapped out Vigilante Armaments for the Riven. This Dispo 5, so the amounts are rather large. As you can see, 233% extra damage, a lot more than Serration, and 151% multi-shot is more than Split Chamber and Vigilante Armaments combined. So a Dispo 5 Riven should make one hell of a difference, and it does. Currently, Flux Rifle Rivens are not very expensive. You're looking at 10, 20 plat unrolled, something like that. I never recommend you spend huge amounts of plat on really good rolled Rivens. Just buy an unrolled one, head on over to Kuva and see what kind of luck you're gonna be having. As you can see, a Dispo 5 rolled nicely does make one hell of a difference, even for a weapon such as the Flux Rifle. It's not a weak weapon, definitely not, but it's not a top tier weapon either, even though this seems very impressive. Now there's one more thing we gotta do, pump up everything with Warframe buffs. Usually I use Mirage Prime or Lord Harrow. In this case, since the weapon does not have crit, it will benefit greatly from Harrow, so that's what we're gonna be doing. Now for some auras and some arcanes. When it comes to the ideal aura, well, to be honest, it's only 27% extra damage rifle lamp. You can even use coaction drift if you want to pump up the value even further. From my point of view, it's not really worth it. So rifle lamp, 27% extra damage, aura, everybody in your party will be receiving this benefit, and it is stackable ×4. When it comes to the arcanes, well, arcane rage is the best one you can get. It's not very expensive either. About 100 plat are free on PC, or you can simply farm it from the third Eidolon down on Cetus. On headshot, 10% chance for plus 120% damage rifles for 16 seconds. As for your second arcane, what you can use is arcane acceleration. Now if you were to use this one, 60% fire rate rifles for 6 seconds, you can drop your fire rate mod if you know you're gonna be using that one. So instead of fire rate, what I can do here is go for even more multi-shot, for example with vigilante armaments, and we're gonna be testing the weapon out like this. This time we're gonna be unpausing the AI so they can hit me and I can get my buffs from Lord Harrow. Harrow is a fantastic frame. He's a support frame but does have some serious offensive possibilities. His second ability will grant you fire rate as well as reload speed, and his 4th ability will grant critical chance on headshot for everybody within your affinity range, as long as your teammates can aim, that is. I know farming Harrow is a bit of a pain and a chore, but it's definitely worth it because he can do something like this, and that is absolutely outstanding. The Flux Rifle, from all points of view, is a mediocre weapon. For a Mark 6, it's pretty decent, but Harrow has the possibility to make it into a godlike weapon. Check out the synergies between Harrow and the Nucor. Link in the card now, and also link in the card now a review to the Synapse. If you like this style of weapon, and are a bit higher in MR11, then the Synapse packs a much greater punch. As for the Flux Rifle, if you're around MR6 and you like this style of weapon, then by all means go for it. It's a beam weapon, and if I am to compare it to all the other beam weapons in the game, then it kinda comes up short. And that's pretty much gonna do it. As always, my name has been Leyzar. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, favorite, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. If you have any feedback for me or would like to request a specific weapon review, then by all means leave it in the comment section down below. Now I can't realistically promise you that it will be done by next time or even within a week, because these reviews do take quite a bit of time. But you can also find me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. Until next time guys, bye bye.